When a priest falls out of line, a lot goes into it. There's every tendency that the faith of his congregants is at stake. Imagine a story building with one of its pillars rotten from the ground up. Everything will be at risk of falling like a house of cards. That's why pastors and spiritual leaders should never allow themselves to fall prey to controversies. In this video, I will bring to your notice the 5 worst scandals of American pastors, one that affected the peace of the entire congregation. You won't believe who's at number 1. Number 5. Theodore McCarrick. Theodore McCarrick was ordained a priest in 1958 and became an auxiliary bishop of the Archdiocese of New York in 1977. He then became Bishop of Metuchen, New Jersey in 1981, Archbishop of Newark in 1986, and Archbishop of Washington, D.C. in 2000. He was created a cardinal in 2001 by Pope John Paul II. He retired in 2006 and moved to a seminary in Maryland. McCarrick was known for his charisma, fundraising skills, and connections with prominent politicians and celebrities. McCarrick never married or had any children, as he took a vow of celibacy as a Catholic priest. However, he was accused of engaging in sexual misconduct with adult male seminarians over decades. He allegedly invited them to his beach house, shared his bed with them, and touched them inappropriately. He was also accused of sexually abusing minors, both boys and girls, as early as the 1970s. One of his accusers, James Grine, claimed that McCarrick molested him for nearly 2 decades, starting when he was 11 years old. He also said that McCarrick baptized him, heard his confession, and gave him communion, violating the sacraments of the Church. In June 2018, the Archdiocese of New York announced that it had found a credible and substantiated allegation that McCarrick had abused a teenage boy in the 1970s. This triggered a wave of other allegations, revelations, and a Vatican investigation into his case. In July 2018, McCarrick resigned from the College of Cardinals, becoming the first cardinal to do so because of sexual abuse claims. In February 2019, he was laicized, or removed from the clerical state, by Pope Francis, losing all his titles and privileges as a priest and a cardinal. In July 2021, McCarrick was criminally charged with sexually assaulting a 16-year-old boy in Massachusetts in 1974. He pleaded not guilty and was released on bail. McCarrick is still awaiting trial and faces up to 5 years in prison if convicted. He is also facing several civil lawsuits from his accusers in other states. Number 4. Jim Bakker. Jim Bakker was born in Muskegon, Michigan on January 2, 1940. His parents were Raleigh Bakker, a local piston ring plant machinist, and Fernia Lynette Irwin, a former stenographer. Jim Bakker attended North Central Bible College in Minneapolis, where he met Tammy Faye LaValle in 1960. They got engaged after 3 dates and dropped out of college to get married on April 1, 1961. They had 2 children, Tammy Sue and Jay Bakker. Bakker began his preaching career in the early 1960s, working as a youth minister in Minneapolis. He and Tammy Faye then moved to Portsmouth, Virginia, to work for Pat Robertson's Christian Broadcasting Network, CBN. They hosted a children's show called Come On Over, and later, Jim Bakker became the host of the 700 Club, the network's talk show. In 1973, he and Tammy Faye left CBN and co-founded the Trinity Broadcasting Network, TBN, in California with Paul and Jan Crouch. However, after 8 months, they fell out with the Crouches and left TBN. They then moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, and launched their network, the PTL, Praise the Lord or People That Love Club. He and Tammy Faye built a $125 million empire, including a religious theme park called Heritage USA, a satellite network, a hotel, and a shopping mall. They were often criticized for their lavish lifestyle and extravagant spending, such as buying air-conditioned doghouses and gold-plated bathroom fixtures. They also faced allegations of financial fraud and mismanagement, such as selling more lifetime memberships to their resort than they could accommodate. Bakker resigned from the PTL ministry in 1987 after it was revealed that he had paid $265,000 in hush money to his former secretary, Jessica Hahn, who accused him of raping and drugging her in 1980. He also admitted to having other affairs and being addicted to prescription drugs. He was replaced by Jerry Falwell, who called him the greatest scab and cancer on the face of Christianity in 2,000 years of church history. In 1989, Bakker was convicted of fraud and conspiracy for diverting millions of dollars of donations from his followers to his personal use. He was sentenced to 45 years in prison, later reduced to 8 years, and was released on parole in 1994. He and Tammy Faye had divorced in 1992, but Tammy remarried and died of cancer in 2007. In 1998, Bakker married Lori Beth Graham, a former televangelist whom he met 50 days earlier. In 2002, they adopted 5 children, and in 2003, he returned to televangelism, launching The Jim Bakker Show, which focuses on the end times and the second coming of Christ while promoting emergency survival products. Number 3. Tony Alamo. Tony Alamo was born Bernie Lazar Hoffman on September 20, 1934, in Joplin, Missouri. His parents were Jewish immigrants from Poland and Romania. He moved to California as a teenager to pursue a career in the entertainment industry. Alamo converted to Christianity in the early 1960s after he said he had a supernatural experience that cured him of a drug addiction. He met his wife, Susan, in 1966, and they started preaching on the streets of Hollywood. They attracted a group of followers, primarily young hippies, who called themselves Jesus freaks. They founded the Alamo Christian Foundation in 1969 and moved their headquarters to Arkansas in the 1970s. Alamo never had any biological children, but he adopted several children from his followers. He also practiced polygamy and married multiple underage girls, some as young as 8, whom he called his wives. He sexually abused and exploited them and forced them to work for his enterprises. He also controlled every aspect of his followers' lives, such as their diet, clothing, education, and finances. He punished anyone who disobeyed or questioned him with beatings, starvation, isolation, and excommunication. Alamo faced several legal troubles such as tax evasion, fraud, labor violations, child abuse, and kidnapping. He was convicted in 1994 of failing to pay taxes on his income and spent 4 years in prison. He was also sued by several former members and associates who accused him of various crimes and damages. He lost most of his properties and assets, and his followers dwindled. Alamo was arrested again in 2008 after the FBI raided his compound and rescued several children. He was charged with transporting minors across state lines for sexual purposes. He was found guilty in 2009 and sentenced to 175 years in prison. Tony Alamo eventually died in 2017 at the age of 82 in a federal prison hospital in North Carolina. Number 2. Bill Gothard. Bill Gothard started his ministry in 1961 as Campus Teams, an organization that visited school groups and encouraged them to make wise choices and pursue purity. He later changed the name to the Institute in Basic Youth Conflicts, IBYC, in 1974, and then to the Institute in Basic Life Principles, IBLP, in 1989. He also founded the Advanced Training Institute, ATI, in 1984, a homeschooling program based on the Sermon on the Mount curriculum. He taught 7 basic life principles that he claimed were universal and that people would suffer consequences for violating them. He also promoted conservative teachings such as large families, homeschooling, aversion to debt, familial patriarchy, the submission of wives to husbands, and modest attire. Gothard had many political connections with Republican leaders like Mike Huckabee, Sonny Perdue, and Sarah Palin. His ministry was also popular with the reality TV Duggar family and others. He never married or had any children, as he vowed celibacy as a Christian minister. However, he was accused of sexual harassment and molestation by more than 30 women, some of whom worked for him. He allegedly touched them inappropriately, made unwanted advances, and groomed them for his pleasure. Some of the incidents occurred when the victims were minors. Gothard stepped down from IBLP in 2014 after the allegations became public. He was sued by a group of alleged victims in 2016, but the cases were dismissed in 2018 due to the statute of limitations. He still maintains his innocence and writes books and articles on his website. Number 1. The Pennsylvania Grand Jury Report. The Pennsylvania Grand Jury Report was a landmark investigation and report released in August 2018 by the Pennsylvania Attorney General, Josh Shapiro. It revealed that more than 300 priests had sexually abused over 1,000 children in 6 dioceses in the state over 7 decades. The report also exposed the systematic cover-up and failure of the church hierarchy to protect the victims and hold the perpetrators accountable. The investigation was launched in 2016 after the previous grand jury report on the Altoona-Johnstown Diocese uncovered widespread abuse and corruption. The grand jury heard from dozens of witnesses and reviewed over 500,000 pages of internal church documents. The report named 301 predator priests and detailed their horrific crimes, such as rape, sodomy, grooming, and manipulation. The report also identified 99 bishops, cardinals, and other church officials who knew about the abuse and concealed it. The report sparked outrage, calls for reform and justice, and similar investigations in other states and countries. The report also recommended 4 changes to the state law, abolishing the criminal statute of limitations for child sexual abuse, creating a 2-year window for civil lawsuits by victims who were previously time-barred, clarifying the penalties for failing to report abuse, prohibiting confidentiality agreements that limit victims' cooperation with law enforcement. The report faced some legal challenges and criticisms from some of the accused priests and church officials, who claimed that it was inaccurate, biased, and violated their due process rights. Some appealed to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, which ordered the redaction of some names and information from the report before its public release. The report had a significant impact on the Catholic Church and society. It led to the resignation of Cardinal Donald Wuerl, the former Archbishop of Washington, D.C., who was accused of mishandling abuse cases in Pittsburgh. It also prompted Pope Francis to issue a letter to the global church, acknowledging the atrocities of the abuse and the culture of death that enabled it. It also inspired many survivors to come forward and share their stories and Catholics to demand accountability and transparency from their leaders. That's all for the video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.